October of 1929, Hazard, Kentucky. A federal weather inspector out of Washington stands in a yard and laughs at a 78-year-old woman holding a woolly bear caterpillar between her thumb and finger. She tells him the black bands are wide this year. She tells him to lay in extra coal. 4 months later, the worst cold snap in 30 years buries the haulers, and his bureau is still calling for a mild winter. Today, you couldn't find 10 people who could read that caterpillar. Number 19 could save your life. Number 6 is outlawed in 5 states. Number 22, they drove all night to record the last man alive who knew it. Scuse before we start. Let's count down. Number 25, the hand-hewn cabin log. 1872, a man named Elias Combs up on Troublesome Creek in Kentucky took a broadaxe and an adze and a stand of yellow poplar, and he built a cabin his great-grandchildren still lived in 1968. The rule was, you scored the log every 6 inches with a felling axe before the broadaxe ever touched it, or the grain would tear and you'd ruin a day's timber. The adze made a wet patient chalk on green poplar, and the chips smelled sour and sweet at once. A hand-hewn sill held that cabin 90 years. A pressure-treated yellow pine sill is rated by the American Wood Council for 40. Number 24, the worm rail locust fence. Black locusts split with iron wedges they called gluts, and a wooden mallet they called a beetle. No nails, no posts in the ground. You laid the rails in a zigzag, 10 high, and gravity did the rest. 80 rails before noon was a fair morning. The USDA Forest Service rates buried locust at 100 years untreated. A cedar fence panel at Lowe's runs $38 and gives you 15 years if you're lucky. There wasn't a single nail in a working farm fence across half of Appalachia in 1880. Number 23, white ash basket splints. A young white ash, 8 inches through, pounded the length of the log with the back of an axe until the spring rings separated from the summer rings and came off in long ribbons. Clean smell, almost cucumber. A burden basket took 3 days. The last documented family making them in Madison County, North Carolina, was the Sheltons, and Lucy Shelton passed in 2017. A handmade Appalachian white oak basket at the Folk Art Center in Asheville now retails between $400 and $1,200. A plastic laundry basket at Walmart is $6.98. Number 22. Hardwood ash lye soap. 1894, Sarah Profit up Cataloochee Cove kept a wooden ash hopper on the back porch. Rainwater poured through hickory and oak ashes, the brown liquor caught in a clay crock underneath, and the rule was, if a fresh egg floated with a quarter-sized circle showing, the lye was right. Weaker, the soap wouldn't set. Stronger, it took the skin off your hands. The whole yard smelled like wet ash and bacon for 2 days when she rendered the hog fat in. A jug of Tide Ultra at Kroger is $24 and contains 17 ingredients she would not have called soap. Number 21, the feather tick mattress. Goose down and duck feathers saved year by year out of the yard, washed in lye water, dried in the sun, stuffed into a tightly woven ticking sack that the wife of the house had sewn herself. A finished tick stood 18 inches deep on the rope bed. The rule was you fluffed it every morning and turned it every Saturday, or the down packed and went sour. A cold goosey smell off it on a damp morning. A queen-size down mattress topper from Brooklyn today is $649 and lasts about 5 years. A feather tick passed through 3 generations. Number 20, the Saltbox Smokehouse Cure. Hams laid in a wooden box, packed in pure salt, no sugar, no nitrites, 1.5 pounds per 10 pounds of meat, 1 day per pound plus 7 extra. Hung over a slow hickory fire afterward, and the smell got into the rafters and never left. Country hams kept 3 years on a nail with no refrigeration. The CDC now warns home-cured pork without commercial nitrites carries a botulism risk. A Benton's Country ham out of Madisonville, Tennessee runs $110 today, and there's a 6-month wait. A note on black locust. Robinia pseudoacacia is native to the southern Appalachians and was carried across the country and into Europe specifically for fence rails and mine props. Its heartwood contains robinitin and other flavonoids toxic to wood decay fungi, which is why a buried locust post outlasts oak by a factor of 4. Hungary now grows more black locust than the United States does. Most Americans have never knowingly seen one. Here's where it gets strange. Number 19, the hand drill fire. This is the one that could save your life. A straight spindle of horseweed or mullein, a fireboard of basswood or cedar, and the patience of a saint. You spin the spindle between your palms, working downward as you go, and the dust that piles up in the notch hits about 800 degrees Fahrenheit before it smokes. Then you tip that coal into a tinder bundle of cedar bark and you breathe it into flame. The rule was, you never stopped working downward. because the second your hands rode back up to the top, the friction broke and the heat went with it. Cedar dust has a sharp, almost peppery smell when it's about to take. A boy in Watauga County in 1910 learned the skill by 12. A weekend wilderness course at the Maine Primitive Skills School today costs $595, and the instructors will tell you most students never get a coal in 3 days. Number 18, dowsing for spring water. A forked branch of dogwood or peach, held loose in both fists, palms up, walked slow across a hillside in the early morning before the dew burned off. When it dipped, you dug. The rule was you cut the fork fresh that morning, never used yesterday's stick. The University of Munich ran a 10-year field trial published in 1995. The lead physicist, Hans-Dieter Betz, tracked dowsers across arid sites in Sri Lanka and found hit rates he called statistically significant beyond chance. The US Geological Survey still officially classifies dowsing as folklore. Both of those things are true at once. A modern hydrogeological well survey in West Virginia today runs about $2,400 before you put a drill bit in the ground. Number 17. Reading the woolly worm. A woolly bear caterpillar has 13 segments, same as the 13 weeks of winter. The rule was the wider the black bands, the harder the cold, segment by segment, head to tail doctor. Mike Peters at North Carolina State tracked them against National Weather Service forecasts across an 18-year window and found the caterpillars matched winter severity slightly better than the Long Range Bureau. The Bureau's National Centers for Environmental Prediction operates a supercomputer that cost the federal government around $400 million. A woolly worm weighs about a gram and walks across your boot in October. Number 16. Reading the ridgetop clouds. A man named Dewey Williams up on Roan Mountain in 1962 could stand on his porch at sunset and tell you within 4 hours when the rain would hit. Mare's tails meant weather in 36 hours. A buttermilk sky meant a front in 2 days. The rule was you watch the ridge first and the valley second, because weather climbs before it falls. There's a damp mineral smell that comes up out of a holler about an hour before a hard rain. East Tennessee State University ran a study in 1997 comparing old-timer cloud forecasts against the regional television broadcasts across a full year in the Nolichucky Valley. The men, average age 73, beat the broadcasts on 24-hour accuracy by 11%. The National Weather Service Morristown office runs a Doppler radar that cost about $13 million. Dewey had a porch. Number 15. Sourwood honey timing. The sourwood tree blooms maybe 10 days a year in late June into early July, and if you miss it, you miss it. The rule was, you watched the black locust bloom first, then the sumac, and you pulled your spring honey supers off the hive on the waning moon before sourwood opened, so the bees would fill clean white comb with nothing but sourwood nectar. A jar of certified single-source Appalachian sourwood honey from Smiley's Apiary today runs about $32 a pint. Real sourwood took third place at the Apimondia World Honey Competition in 1996 in Lausanne, Switzerland. The men who could time it by the moon and the locust bloom together are mostly gone now. A note on the woolly bear. The caterpillar is the larva of the Isabella tiger moth, Pyroctia isabella, and the band coloration is now understood by entomologists to reflect the previous summer's growing conditions, not the coming winter. But here's the thing. A wet, warm summer that produces wide black bands also tends, by atmospheric pattern, to precede a colder winter. The grandmothers were right. They were just right by a different mechanism than they thought. Here's the one that would get you arrested today. Number 14. Digging ginseng. American ginseng Panax quinquefolius, growing wild on the north slopes under sugar maple and tulip poplar. The rule was sacred and it was old. You did not dig a plant under 7 years. You counted the scars on the rhizome, one for every year the top had died back, and if there weren't 7, you walked away. You buried the red berries where you took the root an inch deep, pointed end down, so the patch would carry on. You took maybe 1 plant in 3. A dry pound of wild ginseng in 1975 sold for about $35. A dry pound today, graded and sold to Hong Kong buyers, runs between $800 and $1,200. The Cherokee National Forest now requires a permit and limits the season to September 1st through December 31st and the US. Fish and Wildlife Service has documented a 70% decline in wild populations across the southern range since 1990. The poachers don't know the rule. The rule is what kept the plant alive for 300 years. Number 13. Digging ramps. Allium tricoccum, the wild leek, came up in April under those same north slopes, leaves before the trees leafed out. The rule, taught hard, was you cut the leaves above the bulb with a knife and left the root in the ground. You did not dig the whole patch. Family ramp patches up Roan Mountain and Grandfather Mountain were guarded the way Moonshine Stills were guarded. You took a son to your patch when he was old enough to keep his mouth shut, and not before. Then the chefs found them. A pound of wild ramps at the Asheville City Market in 2023 went for $24, and the same pound in Nashville restaurants ran north of 40. A 2019 study out of West Virginia University found that commercial whole bulb harvest reduces a ramp patch by half in 7 years and to nothing in 15. The smell of a fresh cut ramp patch is garlic and onion and wet leaf duff all at once. Number 12. Bloodroot salve. Sanguinaria canadensis, dug in early spring before the leaf unfurls, when the root snaps red between your fingers like a cut finger itself. A woman named Edith Bushnell up Big Stone Gap, Virginia in 1941 made a salve from the dried, powdered root mixed with zinc chloride and lard, and the rule was, and this rule mattered, you used it on the surface, you used it small, you used it once. More than that, and it would burn through to the bone. The smell of fresh cut bloodroot is sharp and almost iodine. A 2021 review out of the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy confirmed that the alkaloid sanguinarine has documented antimicrobial and anti-tumor activity in laboratory studies. The FDA has also issued warning letters against companies selling bloodroot salves online, citing severe tissue damage in misuse. Both things are true at once. The grandmothers knew the dose. That was the whole skill. Number 11. Black walnut hull tincture. Late September, when the green hulls on the black walnut started to bruise black at the edges, you crushed them with a hammer, packed a mason jar, covered them in corn liquor or grain alcohol, and let it sit 6 weeks in a dark cabinet. The rule the grandmothers taught was, the darker the stain on your hands, the stronger the medicine. It was the wormer. Given to children every fall, a teaspoon, and it tasted like iodine and oak. Ethnobotanists at the University of Kentucky have been documenting the practice since 2015 in a race against time, because the women who knew the proportions by color alone are mostly in their 90s now. A bottle of pharmaceutical-grade albendazole today, prescription only, runs about $150 for a single course. A black walnut tree, free in any fence row in eastern Kentucky, drops about 30 pounds of hulls every fall. A note on Panax quinquefolius. American ginseng was first exported to China out of Boston in 1784 aboard the Empress of China, and ginseng was, for a stretch in the late 1700s, the single most valuable cash export from the Appalachian backcountry. Daniel Boone himself dug and traded it. Modern wild ginseng in southern Appalachia is listed under CITES Appendix 2, meaning every single dried root crossing the U.S. border is by law individually documented. Number 10. Apple Butter Day. October, a copper kettle in the side yard, 15 bushels of stamen and winesap apples. 14 hours of stirring with a long wooden paddle, and the rule was the paddle never stopped, 90 seconds, and the bottom scorched. Sugar and clove only in the last hour. A jar of Musselman's at Food Lion is $3.49. A jar from the Burnsville Festival last fall went for $14. Number 9. The sorghum stir-off. Sorghum cane crushed through a horse-drawn 3-roller mill in late September, juice cooked 6 hours in a long copper evaporator. The rule was you skimmed the green foam off the cold end and you pulled the syrup when a drop on a cold plate stayed put. A quart of Muddy Pond sorghum runs $18 today. Fewer than 90 commercial sorghum mills still operate in the United States. There were over 12,000 in 1920. Number 8. Lye hominy. Dried field corn boiled in hardwood ash lye until the hull slipped, then rinsed 7 times in cold spring water. The rule was 7 rinses, never 6. Nixtamalization, same chemistry the Mexicans used for masa, releases the niacin in the kernel. Pellagra killed 3,000 Southerners a year through the 1920s, and the mountain families who kept making hominy didn't get it. Number 7. Salt curing country ham. Here's the one that's still legal. For now. A whole hog ham salted in December, hung in the meat house through summer, 12 months minimum, 18 better, 24 for a wedding. Fat goes amber and translucent. Licensed traditional producers in the southern Appalachians dropped from over 400 in 1960 to 28 today. Number 6. Split oak ladderback chair seating. Strips of white oak soaked woven over and under across the chair frame in a herringbone pattern. The rule was you wove it tight enough to bounce a quarter. A handmade Berea College chair runs $1,200 today. Number 5. The Mountain Dulcimer. A full year of seasoning the wood, then shaving the soundboard by ear, tapping it as you went until the pitch sat right. The rule was, you stopped shaving the second the tap tone went hollow. A factory dulcimer at Guitar Center is $170 and sounds like a box. Number 4. Coded album quilt patterns. The Underground Railroad signal quilt tradition is contested by historians, but Smithsonian curators have documented specific Appalachian album patterns. Bear's Paw, Wagon Wheel, Crossroads, passed mother to daughter as visual code. A documented antique album quilt at Skinner Auction in 2022 sold for $14,000. Number 3. The copper pot still. This was the one outlawed in 5 states. USDA distillation studies in the 1930s confirmed the copper itself binds sulfur compounds and produces a cleaner spirit than stainless. The rule was, you ran the heads off and you ran the tails off and you kept only the heart. A federal still permit today costs about $3,000 a year. Number 2. Brain tanning a whitetail hide. This is the one the Library of Congress drove all night for. Every deer's brain tans its own hide. You smoked it over punky maple, worked it soft for 8 hours by hand, and the result was a buckskin no chemical tannage on earth can match. The last documented full-process tanner in Madison County passed in 1998. Number 1. The bee gum hive. A hollow black gum log, set on a flat stone, capped with a board. No frames, no foundation. Bees drew their own comb the way they had for 10,000 years. The last keeper in Letcher County, Kentucky could forecast a 3-day weather turn from the pitch of the hive's hum. He died in 2023. Pick one, try it this season. Prove the grandmothers right. Tell me in the comments, what's the one skill from your own family nobody can do anymore? A 300-year-old library is closing one old man at a time. Your grandfather knew. Now you know.